I think as for a woman, knowing that my husband is watching porn, it's a very insecurity thing for me. Like it makes me feel like, well, why is he watching it? And am I not satisfying you enough to where you have to go and watch it somewhere else, to where you're enjoying it more elsewhere? And so that was a question that popped up when we first got married, was like, well, what am I not doing right? And it was like, I'm failing you as a wife. And so it was a big insecurity for me. And that was a big topic that we discussed in the beginning of our marriage as well.
Welcome back to The Donkey and the Bee with your hosts, Brett and Laura Shotkavis, where we talk all things marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. And today we're getting down and dirty with a pretty heavy topic. We want to address one of the two biggest things why couples get divorced, right? That's sex and that's money. And let's talk a little bit about sex today. And more specifically, there is a problem with pornography in our world, and it affects our marriages so drastically. So we want to share some of the paths and ways that we've helped each other be successful in this fight against pornography, against masturbation, and really bettering our marriage together and coming at this as a couple and not coming at this divided.
So we know that this is a very rampant problem within our culture now. So we decided to do a little bit of research, right? We both looked up statistics on porn and pornographic websites. And so I wanted to read a few of them to you. This is from Mission Frontier's website. It says that over 40 million Americans are regular visitors to porn sites. There are around 42 million porn websites, which totals around 370 million pages of porn. This one I thought was super interesting. The porn industry's annual revenue is more than the NFL, NBA, and MLB combined. It is also more than the combined revenues of ABC, CBS, and NBC, which is an atrocious amount. But what I thought was super interesting and actually really devastating was 56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. So 56% of marriages are failing because of this. Why is it so rampant in our culture? I think people don't see it as a problem. I think there's a lot of individuals out there who are maybe even listening to this thinking, oh, these people are stupid. I watch porn all the time and my marriage is great. And so I don't think that they're aware of the effects that it's having on themselves and also on their marriage and also even in relationship with their kids and with their family.
So we know that porn is all over our world. Everybody has it at their access. Even little kids have access to porn, right? It's in people's workplaces, it's in their marriage, it's in their families, it's everywhere. So the question that you and I had is it a problem, right? We've had times in our lives where there's been porn, and there's been times in our lives when there has not been porn. And we have made the decision to classify this as a bad thing, right? Personally, in our marriage, in our family, as our kids are getting older, we want this not as a common thing, not something we want to accept, and then not something we want to hide, but it's still there. We just want it completely away from us. So I think that's the kind of the first step, right? As you're looking into porn and considering the ramifications for your marriage, for your family, for your children, is it something that you want to investigate and take a look at what are the effects in your life? Is it detrimental to your marriage, to your family, to your kids? Because we found firsthand that it is, and then we took action steps on it. We decided we wanted this out of our lives. And then so we had many discussions on how do we actually do this? What's a practical way to throw porn out of our families and out of our personal lives?
So we know this is a problem in our culture, but we also know this is a problem in the church too, which I think is also interesting to note. I think it's over 50% of pastors masturbate and look at porn. So it's also a struggle for them as well. So we are people of faith and we want to be above the average. We don't want to be average. We teach our kids not to be average. We want to be not the status quo. And so we hold ourselves to a higher standard of we practice what we preach and we, actions speak louder than words, right? So we decided as a couple to not masturbate and not look at porn. And it's kind of a a secular view and a faith view, and it kind of came together for both of us, right? Like I believe you should guard your heart, you should guard your mind, and with that, you're guarding your marriage and your relationships. And so I'm very keenly aware of what I put in my mind, what I'm watching, what I'm, ingesting in my body. Same with Brett. We're very into all that. And so it's super important to us. And I know that if you have those visual pictures in your mind, I think as for a woman, knowing that my husband is watching porn, it's a very insecurity thing for me. Like it makes me feel like, well, why is he watching it? And am I not satisfying you enough to where you have to go and watch it somewhere else, to where you're enjoying it more elsewhere? And so that was a question that popped up when we first got married, was like, well, what am I not doing right? And it was like, I'm failing you as a wife. And so it was a big insecurity for me. And that was a big topic that we discussed in the beginning of our marriage as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because it's part faith for us. And we believe that we should not be unfaithful in action, but also in mind. But then it's part like secular, because you are literally hurting your mind, hurting your marriage, putting these toxic things into your body through your eyes. And it affects your family, it affects your jobs, it affects everything, right? Like the statistics are there. Your marriage is more likely to fail if one person is addicted to porn. And porn is like cigarettes or like some type of drugs. Like your brain gets hooked on it and you want more and more and more. And you need more kinky stuff, more weird stuff in order to get the same result, the same effect. And so it's a slippery slope of nastiness. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we combine these two things, right? Really, here's our core belief in God, in what we believe is moral and right. But then here's also this other aspect of we are protecting our family, protecting our marriage and our children, and saying, okay, we don't want this in our family, regardless of our faith situation. So really, it came back to this decision. And it was about halfway through our marriage, right? Maybe 8 or so years into our marriage. We've been married about 17 years now?
Yeah, 17 years.
Okay, 17 years. And so we've had conversations multiple times, but we really made a commitment, about 7 or 8 years ago to say that, hey, we don't want to have porn or masturbation in our marriage. And I think that was a very important commitment for us. It brought us together in this way that is hard to articulate, but it really is not having these sexual wedges. But potentially, most marriages suffer because of money or because of sex. And we really got on the same page with the sex part of it. And part of that was defensive and saying we're not going to do these certain things. And then the offensive side of it is here's the things that we're going to do to have a great marriage sexually and in other ways.
Well, a lot of that comes back to communication, right? I think we all know, yes, communication is key, right? We all say it. It's all said across social media. But I think that there's a lack of understanding of knowing how to do that. And I can totally attest to that, because Brett will tell you, I probably am not the best communicator when it comes to talking about my feelings and stuff, and also talking about sex. So it was something that we had to discuss many times prior, and it took me a little bit of time to get comfortable talking about it. And so I think that's something that if you are a team together, this is, ride or die. Like this is your person that you're doing life with. I think that there has to be that sense of trust and understanding of, hey, one person may not be comfortable talking about it. And so creating a safe space to where there's no judgment, or maybe if you didn't quite understand what they're saying, maybe just ask clarifying questions back to be sure you're on the same page as far as sex and porn. That's what we did. We made sure that this was, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And this is how we're going to do it, as far as creating a plan going forward to create just a winning relationship based on a clear understanding of what we each need and want.
So I think you can say that and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds too easy. Like, this is sex. This is like biological needs and drives. Like, it's way more complicated than that, right? I may have the best intentions, but what happens when you're not around and I need sex, right? Like that's really what happens there. And so we kind of talk through these things many times. And I think we continue to have these conversations probably every 6 months or so, just to kind of realign, get on the same page. And really, okay, I think as a male's perspective, it's very biological, and I want a practical solution. If I need to have sex, I need to have sex, right? So we had this conversation, right? Like, you have different biological sexual drive needs than I do, right? And as a man, I think that I want to have sex, or I need to have sex every day or every 2 days, right? Like, we're pushing 3-4 days. Like, no, that's not going to happen. That's too long for me. And I think that was really where we started is, hey, Laura, you know what? Here is what my sexual routine looks like, my biological clock, as far as, when I need to go. And yours is different than mine. And I think we had to come to this understanding that we want the same goal for our family, which is purity, and it's avoiding porn, it's avoiding masturbation. And if you say, hey, Brett, I want to have sex every 5 to 7 days, that's what's good for me. And I say, I want to have sex every 1 to 2 days, we're not matching up, right? One of us has to sacrifice in that way. So that's why it was such a vital conversation. And I think this is really the issue with males and pornography is men need to have orgasms every day or two, right? And if their spouse, their wife is not on that same rotation or need, then this is where this conversation comes in. And this is how we practically did it. I said, babe, okay, we have decided that porn is bad, that masturbation is bad. We don't want it in our family, in our marriage. How do I solve the problem on this side, right? Well, there's a problem on the female side also, but at least on the man, it's very apparent. It's very blunt and biological. Like, I need to go more frequently than you. So then we just came at it from this perspective of, okay, well, if you and I just, realistically decide that masturbation, that porn is not an option, it's off the table, then I need to have more sex, right? Probably more sex than you want to have, but nonetheless, I still need to have that much sex, right? Realistically, if it's been 2 days, it's been too long, right? Like, we got to get this going here. And I think it's a understanding that we both have to communicate both sides of these things, right? This is just one side, the male side. There's the female side also. But we have to come together and say, here's what my needs are, and here's what your needs are. And we both really have to come at it from the perspective of we are both sacrificing, not for the other person, but really for our marriage and our family.
It comes down, I think, to the success in a marriage, I think, is being selfless, right? And putting the other person first. And I think that is something that is missed a lot in most marriages. It's the common what's in it for me? I want this. Why aren't you doing this for me? Where I think we try our hardest to put the other individual first. And so that's the conversation that we had was, okay, you need this. Okay, I don't necessarily need it that much. Granted, there are plenty of females out there that have a very, very strong sex drive, just like men. And I feel like there's a misconception that women don't have sex drives as strongly as men do. And there are some women out there that do. But I personally don't need sex every 2 days. It's just not how I'm wired. I don't. So then it comes to the point of, okay, well, if I don't need it that much, but you need it a lot, well then, okay, I have to come to the understanding of we made the agreement of there's going to be no porn in our marriage. And so if we are holding ourselves to that, I want to help you succeed in that. And I think you want to help me succeed in that too. And so what can I do to help you succeed in that? If it's having sex every 2 days, perfect. Do I want to do it every 2 days sometimes? No, sometimes I don't. And you know what? That's what it's like being selfless. It's putting the other person first before you. I would not say that I feel like I'm a rag doll and you're just, doing me whenever you pleasure, right? That's not my mindset toward it. My mindset is we are a team together and I want to see you succeed in every area of your life. And so I want to support you in that. And that's really my attitude toward it. And I think that there are probably lots of people listening to this now that think, oh, that's gross. She just gives it up whenever he wants it. That's not how it should be. But that's not my mentality. I'm viewing it very differently than that. I'm viewing it as a team effort and wanting to see you succeed.
It's true. And you didn't come to this conclusion lightly. It was many conversations that we had before you adopted this mindset. And one of the things that I explained and tried to make this analogy, right? They say that men think about sex every 4 seconds. And sometimes that's true. But compare it this way, and I think this is a very applicable analogy for a woman to understand. Let's just say your bladder is full and you really, really, really have to pee like right now. And let's also imagine that while you really, really have to pee, you're sitting in traffic in your car and it's like an hour until you get home. And every time you touch the gas, you move forward and you hit the brakes again, your bladder shakes and it's like, oh, I gotta pee. Literally, you're thinking about having to pee every 4 seconds because your body is telling you, I have to pee, I have to pee, I have to pee. Get it out now. Your bladder is full. The analogy is so similar to a male's sex drive. If my testes are full, my body is telling me every 4 seconds, get it out, get it out, get it out. It's not about lust. It's not about men being horn dogs. There's a physical, biological thing that is happening that your body is reacting to. Think of it this way. If your husband says, hey babe, let's have romantic time tonight. And you say, no babe, I had a hard day at work. I'm really tired. Let's do it tomorrow. Okay. Imagine if you're sitting in this car again with a bladder that's about to explode and somebody says, hey, I want you to hold that for another 24 hours. You'd be like, that's not realistic. I'm literally going to pee my pants. That's the way a man feels or your husband feels when he lays down there in bed and he says, okay, well, I guess I'll try again tomorrow night. What is he supposed to do? His stuff is about to explode. He's supposed to wait another 24 hours. And then what happens when you tell him no? When you're grouchy, right? Like,
I have a statement here. So I think that, yes, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I think that there's a big role on the men's side as well to, because I know women, they have to get wooed and they have to be in the mood, right? But I think that men don't necessarily put the woman first and want to pleasure them every time. I think a lot of times it's very much like, hey, I need an orgasm. Let's get this on. Let's do this now. Bam. And so it's not like, well, what can I do for you? Right? Like, I want you to have this pleasurable experience as well. And so I think a lot of times in marriages, women have a negative association towards sex because it's like, oh, he has to go again. Like, okay, here we go. Because it's never pleasurable for them. And so I think if the man can put his wife first, get pleasure out of her, then I think she will feel the same way and, want to pleasure her husband. So I think that that's an important thing to say because a lot of women don't orgasm during sex. And so I think that men just think, oh, I'm going to penetrate and be done and that's it. Well, okay, what is there? Is there a way that you can get your wife off? Like she's going to enjoy that. What is something that she likes and that you can together pleasure each other?
I think it's spot on. I think that men need to do a better job of learning their wife, knowing what works for her. And really it can be just trial and error, right? It's like, but it also is communication. Sometimes you just got to ask. And if you haven't asked before, it can be kind of awkward. But hey, it's like that song.
What song?
What song is that?
I don't know.
What's your favorite position? What's that guy's name?
Oh gosh. I do not remember what that is.
Let's look it up. So it's like that Jack Black song, where he says, what's your favorite position? Sometimes you just need to ask your wife, your partner, what is going to help you, right? Because it's so easy for a man to be like, hey, I just got to get my needs met. I have this ball of passion inside of me that needs to come out. I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to go to sleep, right? Like you got to be selfless in here, right? There's got to be give and take on both sides for the common benefit of your marriage. And it really starts by asking, what can I do? And perhaps like if that's you as a man and you're going to go and then go to sleep, then you take care of her first before you take care of yourself. And that way everybody wins.
So if you want to take infidelity, masturbation, or porn out of your relationship, the first thing to do is communicate, right? But what if you don't know how to communicate that to your spouse or significant other? I would say have them listen to this podcast. Maybe this will be something that they can listen to, and then it could spawn conversation from there. Since it is something that's kind of out of the blue, if you're like, hey, I got to talk to you about something, which I've done lots of times in the past, maybe that's just not your communication style and you're uncomfortable with it. Have them listen to this and then start the conversation there. Say, hey, I really don't want to watch porn anymore, or I really don't want to masturbate, every other day. I want to satisfy you and I want you to satisfy me since we're in this together.
So these discussions about sex and getting on the same page, they're usually not hashed out in one session, right? But you can use this as an opener. Have these conversations because the man and the woman, they're going to have different sides of this. And it really takes several conversations to really digest and understand the other person's point of view, especially with such a hot topic like sex. So don't expect that you can be like, hey, babe, let's do this, right? Like have several conversations about it, but really come at it from the perspective of this is what's best for our marriage. This is what's best for our family and how we succeed together for the long haul.
Thanks again for joining us on The Donkey and the Bee. We know this is a heavy topic, but we're hopeful that this is something that will help you in your relationships with your significant other. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you'll be notified of any new episodes that get dropped. We will see you on the next one.